This movie kind of felt like a 2-hour Disneyland ride. Stay tuned to learn why. Hello, and welcome to the non-spoiler section of this review for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. If you want to jump right to the spoiler section, you'll find the timestamps in the description. And if you want to support me, consider liking and subscribing. Our current goal is 110 subscribers. So, Doctor Strange 2 is honestly a pretty hard movie to even describe without spoiling it. Google can't even describe the film that well. Like, look at this vague-ass description. I will just say this is the basic premise. Doctor Strange, master of the mystic arts, and Wong, the sorcerer supreme, come across America Chavez, a girl with the power to travel between the multiverse. Together, the three work to stop a demonic force intent on hunting America for her unique ability. Honestly, I think that's a better rundown of the movie, and I would summarize my experience like this. This movie has a little too much fun and not enough focus. Although it's very clear what the characters are trying to accomplish here, the situations in this movie kind of force them to be aimless. Hopefully, I don't ruin anyone's experience by saying that we visit other universes in this movie, and a lot of them are not the intended destinations for the characters. So while the novelty of seeing alternate universes is definitely entertaining, it leaves the characters kind of aimless as they try to figure out where to go or whom to go to. That's why I would describe the movie as a 2-hour Disneyland ride. You start off by getting transported to a fun new world, there's lots to see, then things escalate, and the ride usually peaks around here, then things get super dark and violent for some reason, and then it kind of just comes to a resolution. And while the comparison here might not be one-to-one, that part about the movie getting dark and violent is certainly true. I remember this movie being marketed as the MCU's first horror film, and I'd say it made a fair attempt. There's a lot of nice horror movie aspects to it, but it never switched into a true horror movie. Like, there's no scene in this movie that I can show someone in isolation and convince them that Doctor Strange 2 is a full-on horror movie. I can tell them it's a slasher film. I think that works during certain scenes. Something else that goes hand in hand with the horror aspects of the film is the editing. Horror movies are edited in a different way than other movies. You often have to leave pauses for tension. You'll have a lot of insert shots for seemingly typical objects. And this movie, going for a horror genre, has a lot of interesting editing, to say the least. Although there is one standout piece of editing involving a character match cutting with their alternate version, and it's honestly kind of beautiful. And before I conclude this part of the review, I think it's important to mention what prior viewing is required before watching this film. 100% you need to have watched all of WandaVision to understand Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We are now in that territory where the Disney Plus shows have an immediate impact on the rest of the MCU. Before you could get by without watching a single episode of everything, but now it is required viewing. I know Kevin Feige revealed that the events of Loki caused the events of No Way Home, but at no point did No Way Home reference or rely on the events of Loki, so I wouldn't count that. But overall, those are my non-spoiler thoughts on Doctor Strange 2. Let's reach the verdict. Would I rewatch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness? And coming out of this movie, with all of the critiques I mentioned here, it would have been a no. But I've had time to really contemplate the themes and story beats of this movie, and it actually sums up to a yes. What's funny is a lot of movies are at their weakest in the second act, but this movie is strangely at its best in the second act. The second act is where we learn more about our characters, but most importantly, the second act of a movie is where it delivers its promise. Whatever you see on the poster, whatever you came to the movie for, should be in the second act. In a spy movie, that's all of the cool action set pieces and espionage. In a slasher movie, that's when all of the teenagers get slaughtered. So while this movie has a relatively weak first and third act, its second act makes it pretty worthwhile, not to mention there's a great running theme in this movie that pulls it all together. Stick around for spoilers to hear more. So yep, that's a yes on rewatching Multiverse of Madness. Now please exit the review if you do not wish to hear about spoilers. Otherwise, let's talk about all the juicy stuff in this movie. So something I've really been chewing around in my brain is the theme of this movie. And I really like the idea that Doctor Strange has been the one to make all of these tough decisions for other people. We begin the movie with Defender Strange making a choice to sacrifice America without her consent. We see the other two strangers tap into the Darkhold because they decided it would be the best course for everyone. And we've already seen our Doctor Strange make one of the biggest choices in the MCU to give Thanos the Time Stone, thus allowing the snap to occur. And that's what Steven faces throughout this movie. His old co-worker confronts him with that question: was it worth it? It turns the blip into a huge trolley problem, and obviously, Wanda is one of the greatest consequences of Strange's actions. Wanda sees her sacrifices as a net loss. The events of Infinity War have only caused her suffering. Now let's talk about Scarlet Witch in this movie. Going into the theater, I had no idea who the villain of the film would be. I assumed it was going to be Mordo, but I was pleasantly surprised when I realized that Wanda was going to be the main threat for the entirety of the film. And I think she's a very effective villain. Wanda was so unpredictable in everything she did, because you never really knew how far she would go. Like, everything she did ended up pushing the limit further and further. And ultimately, I really like the way that she was defeated. First of all, I think having Billy and Tommy reject Wanda was one of the only ways to defeat her. And secondly, it ties back to the theme of the movie. Doctor Strange finally relies on someone else to overcome this large-scale threat. He actively trusts in America to take on the responsibility of saving the world. Moving on to America Chavez, I enjoyed her character overall. I will say though, that her acting was a little like Spy Kidsy at time, and I feel really bad for saying that because she was pretty young during the time of production, and I actually follow the actress on TikTok and I see how excited she is to play America, but it's just something I noticed. Like, the tone she gave off in her acting didn't really match what the other actors were putting out. It could be the script too, because some of the lines for everyone were pretty corny. I also don't really like America's backstory. Like, she was frightened by a bee and she sent her parents to random universes. I get that it's kind of a play on the butterfly effect, where small things can have a resounding effect on the universe, but to me, that's kind of like young Clark Kent sneezing and then blowing away Martha. And like, not to mention how her and Strange's memories were revealed. They just stand on a convenient mind-reading platform device, and we get instant character development. And my last point about America is that I don't understand why she's training to be a sorceress at the end. Like, why aren't you searching for your parents now that you have control over your powers? But when it's all said and done, it's nice to have a new hero added to the MCU, especially with powers so relevant to where Phase 4 is going. And sticking to the characters, oh my gosh, Mr. Fantastic is in the MCU! Played by John Krasinski, no less. This makes me so happy just because I really like Mr. Fantastic, and the beauty of this is that people can stop bugging him about playing Reed Richards. Even if they cast someone else for the actual Fantastic Four movie, at least we can say we had him. And yeah, as for a couple of final points, I really like that we got to see Doctor Strange really struggle in this movie. Ever since the end of his solo film, I feel Doctor Strange has been extremely confident in his abilities. Like, he dealt with Loki no problem in Ragnarok and matched Thanos pretty well in Infinity War. Not to mention, he basically orchestrated the final battle in Endgame. He's just the guy you go to if you need something done in the Marvel Universe. But here, it really felt like Strange was desperate, and he was running out of resources and people he could trust. Because on that note, I thought it was really clever that Doctor Strange dreamwalks into Defender Strange's corpse on the 616 Earth. Like, it's really him just using what he has. I also realized that Christine defending Strange's body while he has an out-of-body battle is very similar to the scene in the first Doctor Strange. So yeah, those are pretty much my collective thoughts on Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I walked out of this film kind of mixed, but overall, it's really made its mark in my mind as an MCU film, and I honestly can't wait to see it again. And so, I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.